Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So previously we spoke about the method of doing the Hifz and how Talha memorized some of the things about his diet and his sleeping pattern and extracurricular activities. But a lot of the questions are about the actual method of how he memorized, how he learned new sabaq, how he learned the new lessons, his revision, how he went over what he'd already memorized. So today, inshallah, I want to kind of explain the actual method of how he was learning and what some of the things that we learned later on that actually we did for a couple of months, and we thought actually there's a better way to do things, and how we kind of the journey that we went through with the different methods of memorizing. So first and foremost, just to explain to you with new sabaq. Again, just as a recap, when a person is doing hifth, you have your new sabaq, your new lesson, which is what they've not memorized yet. They're memorizing new every day. Then you have the revision, which is also known as sabaqi or sabaq para. And that's basically the para or the juz or the sipara that they're memorizing. Whatever they've memorized, they read that every single day. So say a person is memorizing the fifth juz, the fifth para, then whatever they've memorized previously of that juz, of that sipara, they read every single day. So say he's read half of fifth, he's on, let's just say he's on درجات منه ومغفرة ورحمة وكان الله غفورا رحيما. Then all the way from والمحصنات until there, this is known as sabaqi or sabaq para, and you read that every single day. The reason why you read that every single day is because this is the one which hasn't really settled down in the memory yet. I'm not fully sure how long-term memory and the rest of it works, but I'm guessing that those who have more kind of knowledge about this will know the actual intricacies of the way this works. But for that to really settle down in the long-term memory, it has to be repeated every single day. And then you have dor or muraja'ah or manzal, and this is, so say he's on the fifth para, the fifth juz, first, second, third and fourth are manzal or dor, and that you split. Some people do quarter of every part every day, some people do half and half every day, but there are different methods. So today I want to kind of just look at, I just want to go through everything, how we did sabaq, how we did sabaq para or sabaqi, and how we did dor or manzal or muraja'ah, and then also some of the techniques that we changed, we adapted, and we kind of tweaked slightly to get better results, inshallah. So we'll just get straight into it. For example, now I'm on Surah Tawbah here. So in Surah Tawbah here, again, first, if you can see these markings, okay, so if you can see the markings here, like this, these are the mistakes. So again, mistakes are completely normal. You're going to make mistakes. Anyone memorizing anything is going to make mistakes. So here, so for example, any mistakes that he makes, we circle the mistakes, or we put it in brackets. Some people underline. In Arabic or Urdu, you normally underline. You do, overline. You don't underline. You make the line on top. Brackets I found easier for Talha, so I used to overline previously, but then I realized the brackets made it easier for him to see exactly what the mistakes were. And the reason why the mistakes need to be marked is when he's learning it. So for example, let's say Talha now, we'll get to new sabaq and the rest of it. I'm just talking about dor and sabaq para, or anything which is muraja'ah, revision. So if he's learning, this is Surah Tawbah. So he's learning from كيف يكون للمشركين عهد عند الله وعند رسوله. So when he's learning this, what Talha would do is he would learn one line at a time. So he's learning the first line, كيف يكون. So when he comes to عهد, so he'd be reciting, he'd be off memory, so he'd be saying كيف يكون للمشركين, and then he'd come to عهد, then he'd say عهد 5 times. So he'd say 5 times looking in عهد 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 عهد, and then he'd look up and say عهد 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 عهد. Then he carry on عند الله وعند رسوله, and then وعند رسوله وعند رسوله, he'd say it 5 times off, basically not looking inside by heart. Then he'd repeat the entire line, so you say the line again, كيف يكون للمشركين عهد عند الله وعند رسوله, inside 5 times, and then he'd say it 5 times again, كيف يكون للمشركين عهد عند الله وعند رسوله, and he'd repeat that 5 times. Then he'd do that with the next line, and the next line like this. And then what he'd do is, when he'd come to the second line, after he'd do the same thing there, then he'd read those 2 lines together. Then he'd learn the third line, the same way he learned the first line. Then he'd learn the fourth line. Then he'd put those 2 lines together again. Then he'd learn the 5th line, and after he'd learned the 5th line, he would put all 5 lines together, and then he'd recite the entire 5 lines off by heart, not looking inside. And that way he'd split this. So again, with my own experience when I did Hifz, and I've been teaching again for many years, the 15-line Qur'an seems to be one of the easiest Qur'ans to memorize in, purely because every page ends in an ayah. As you can see, every single page ends in an ayah. So wherever you go, It's ending in an ayah, which makes it quite easy. Plus every juz or every para has 20 sides or 10 pages only, 300 lines except for 29th and 30th, because they've got multiple surahs, so the surahs take up some extra space. So that's how he would be learning that door revision. And you'd have to obviously sit with him. So again, I think I mentioned this before, when he's only 6 years old, or if you're doing with your child who's only 5, I mean, Tallah started when he was 4, so he needed us to be sat with him each time. He's not going to, normal Hifz students who are 10, 12, 13, they just sit on the side and they learn it. He needed someone sat with him each time saying, okay, now the next line, now the next line. And again, because he's young, he'd learn it and he'd start reading it off by heart, making mistakes, not realizing. So then you have to pull him back up. And that's how he'd learn that basically, previous sabaq. For new sabaq, which is the one that obviously a lot of people are asking, so that's revision he's learned. How is he learning it new? So it's fresh. He's not basically seen this before. How is he learning? So again, we'll just stick to Surah Tawbah. And let's just say now he's on bara'atum min Allahi wa rasulihi ila alladhina ahadtum min al-mushrikeen. So what he would do is he would learn 3 words at a time. Okay, so again, this was afterwards. When he first started Hifz, he was learning 1 word at a time. So when he was on like أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون, he would learn أولئك, then he learn على, then he put أولئك and على together. Then he learn هدى من ربهم. When the words are joined, you have to just join them all. هدى من ربهم, and then he join it with أولئك. Then he say وأولئك 5 times, then هم المفلحون, and then recite the entire line at once. But that was at the beginning. But as he started progressing, you could do 2 words at a time, then 3 words at a time. And also, the Qur'an, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it so it's very easy to memorize, in the sense it's not that every single word is a new word on every page. A lot of the words are repeated. It's like any book, certain words, common words, like just in English, you'd be reading a book, the, and, because, this, therefore, after, before. Hundreds, thousands of words are repeated. The Qur'an is not any different. All the words are repeated. Then sometimes entire phrases or a couple of lines or an entire line or a couple of words are repeated. So when it would come to that, he'd memorize, he'd just say the entire thing at once, because he'd make the links. And I would push that along and say to him, remember which surah this is in? Do you remember reading this? Do you remember reading that? And that really helped him. So that's how you'd learn. So instead of just going back to Surah Tawbah, so he's learned that first line. Then he would learn from the next line, فَسِيحُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ أَرْبَعَةَ أَشْهُرٍ وَعْلَمُوا أَنَّكُمْ غَيْرُ مُعْجِزِ اللَّهِ. So again, you don't be rigid and think, well, he's going to stop on that second line, because here, example, مُعْجِزِ اللَّهِ is joined to the next line, so you have to go to مُعْجِزِ اللَّهِ. So he learned again, فَسِيحُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَسِيحُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَسِيحُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, then أَرْبَعَةَ أَشْهُرٍ, then وَعْلَمُوا أَنَّكُمْ, and then similar to غَيْرُ مُعْجِزِ اللَّهِ. Then he would learn those 2 lines together. So again, from bara'atum until mu'jizillah. Then he would, again, 5 times was a magic number, we realized. We did 7 times, we did 3 times. 3 times was too few, except if it was a line or sabaq which you already knew. So if it's repeated, for example, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَهُمْ جَنَّاتٌ تَجْرِي, or something like this, or رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ, or other basically phrases which are repeated, then you could read that 3 times. However, for anything which was new, okay, and which was the case for especially until the first 15, 20 ajza, first 20 or so, paras, then he'd be basically repeating it 5 times. So 3 times was too less. It wasn't sticking in his head. 7 and 8 times it was taking up too much time, because you have to remember he's learning all of that. Then he's got sabaq bar, then he's got dawr as well. So what he was doing 5 times was like the magic, not magic, but 5 times was basically the number which was working. And so he learned 2 lines like that. Then learned the next 2 lines, and he learned the next 2 lines. So he was doing, so initially when we first started, he was learning like 3 lines, 4 lines. And then we slowly, gradually increased it onto 13 lines, and sometimes you 15 lines. In the school holidays, so he had no school, so them 6 hours that take a lot of energy out of a child and a lot of time. He could learn more sabaq. He'd get more dawr done as well, because you've got a lot more time, on your hands, and stuff like in his 6-week holidays, taking advantage of that big chunk of holidays, and weather's good as well. So basically, the sun's out, and you go in the garden for a read. Sometimes sit in the garden and read as well, because just get that fresh, the fresh air as he's reading, and moving him around and stuff. So this is what he was doing in terms of how he was memorizing that new sabaq. But again, you have to sit with him, and basically, so what would happen is, I would read to him and he'd repeat. So the first time he's learning something, I would read to him first, because if he learns it wrong, in terms of pronunciation, because even if a child has completed the Qur'an, until you're proficient, you will come across words. Even people who have been reciting Quran for years, for decades, they still make mistakes. So very important for the parent to read the lines to them, so when they're learning it first time, you're reading with them, so you can take those mistakes out. If there's a parent who doesn't, this is a question I was asked, so I'll preempt the question. Those parents who don't know how to recite well, so you can obviously go onto YouTube and you can find a good reciter. Those who recite clearly with the correct tajweed and they enunciate the letters so you can really hear exactly what they're saying, that will be very helpful. Again though, keep in mind at this age, if you're starting young, 5, 6, 7, 8, they can't formulate letters properly anyway. Regardless of how hard you try, they cannot pronounce the letters perfectly, whether it's the ayn, whether it's the sad, whether it's tha, or even if it's dhal. They will make mistakes, but that's fine because their body is not really, their tongue and their brain's not good at processing that yet. That will come later. As long as the foundations are strong, the pronunciation will automatically improve as they progress. So this was like basically the way we were doing it. So in the morning when he'd wake up at 6 o'clock, so before school was the time for sabak and sabak bara every day. That is what the rule was, that he'd get sabak and sabak bara done in the morning before school. Because sabak and sabak bara, again, my own personal experience with Talha, with other students and myself, is that that's what takes the most brain power. Learning something new, it would take a lot of brain power. And again, with the sabak bara, sabaqi, because that's a fresh one, that would require even more basically effort. So we'd get that done in the morning because he's fresh in the morning. So he goes to sleep early, he wakes up early. I found with Talha and with many of the students that we've taught in the masjid, the morning is the best time for them to learn because they've had a full night's sleep. It's a fresh day, wherever the tiredness and whatever else it is from the day before, that's finished, and they've got basically the time, they've got the energy to learn. And then after school he'd learn his door, and even with door as well. So again, going back to sabak bara, this is something we did quite different. So those who are Hifz teachers will know that normally sabak bara, there are two ways with sabak bara or sabaqi, is that, for example, again, just sticking to Surah Tawbah, if a person is memorizing the 10th bara and he's done, like say till say he's gone to like إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين, so he's over there. Now every single day sabak bara, some teachers will do from wa'alamu, he read till إنما الصدقات, then the next day say he's gone to into لا تعتذروا قد كفرتم بعد إيمانكم, then his sabak bara will be until لا تعتذروا, until the entire para, until he gets to a point where he's reading the entire para as sabak bara. And others, which I've seen a method also, which I use with some of my students, is that they split. So one day they would read the first half, and the second day they would read everything else other than that. And then it would continue till they finish the 10th para, 10th juz. So even when he's on Ya'tadhuruna on 11th, he's still reading first half of 10th one day, plus what he's memorized from 11th. Then the next day, second half of 10th, plus what he's memorized from 11th, and continuing until he reaches about half of 11th. But that way, he's not going over one para or one juz a day. At the same time, that 10th is still there. He's getting extra, extra practice in it. And so I had that in mind. And because of that, when Talha would have sabak bara or sabaqi, it would actually be not just the part he was on. So for example, again, let's just stick to 10th. If he's memorizing 10th round of Surah Tawbah, he'd have 10th would be sabak bara, sabaqi, as would 9th and even 8th. Okay, so he'd have 8th, 9th and 10th. So it'd be about 2 paras or so of sabaqi or sabak para. And for the reason for that is because he's so young that long-term memory is not as strong. It's not basically as active as once you reach the age of 7. So you have to basically do that a bit more, make sure. Otherwise, if you left 8th in terms of when you went on to like just 9th of sabak bara, 8th would become very weak. And then that's the biggest headache for anyone doing Hifz, for any parent, any teacher, is when a child starts to forget what they've already learned, because then you've got to stop new sabak. It's just stop, start, stop, start. It demoralizes the child, demoralizes the parent, or the teacher, and it's just basically all around like a loss. So you're just staying on top of it. So that's how we do sabak bara or sabaqi. And then door was similar with door. So again with door, you'd have let's say he was initially reading a quarter door, so just a quarter para door, and even that. So again, we stick to the example of 10th. While he's on 10th, so obviously 9th and 8th are sabak para, so he's got 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th, them 7 paras as his door, as his manzil, as muraja'a. Now if you were to work your way through first, so he reads quarter of first, that's 4 days, then quarter of second, that's another 4 days, so 8 days, another 4, 12, 16, 20. By the time you come to 7th para, it's been basically over a month. So what we used to do was, one day he'd read, so let's just say, for example, today his door was the last quarter of 7th. Okay, let's just say today his door was the last quarter of 7th. So he's reading from وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ لِأَبِيهِ آزَرَ until the end. Then tomorrow his door wouldn't be the next quarter of 7th. Rather, we'd go back to first. So we'd basically come and meet in the middle. So one day, the first quarter of 7th, let's say a quarter of 7th, a quarter of first, the next day, another quarter of 7th, first, like this. And then you go down to 6th, 2nd, 5th, 3rd, 4th, like that. And you'd meet in the middle to make sure that it wasn't too long before. And then once he's done that once, then the next time you do it from first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. The next time you do it, you'd go backwards. So mixing it up to make sure that it's never a huge gap between each time he does door, because that's what would make it a week. And that's for any Hifz student, to be honest with you. Until they're about 12, 13, then it's fine. You can just keep the routine of just going one, first, second, third, all the way through to 15th. So this is kind of like the method that we were using with him. Like I said, obviously initially he started off with learning a couple of lines, and then increasing them lines slowly, and obviously as we went along the paras, he's getting to 9 lines, 10 lines, 11 lines, 12 lines, 13 lines, and then sometimes doing 14 and 15 depending on if it's holidays or if if it's easy, or say he knows some of it already, the ayahs from the Ruqya. He knew them because they're always playing at night. Or Surah Yasin, or Surah Rahman, or Surah Kahf as well, and some of random verses from Surah Baqarah, etc., which he already knew. So we'd increase those lines and kind of get him to read more. And that's how we just do it. And obviously with every as an incentive, every para he would get so a treat. So he'd know that when I finish a para, when I finish one juz, there's going to be a treat at the end, and the treat is his to choose, whether he wanted a toy, whether he wanted to go out to eat, or order some food in, or he wanted to have some extra time on FIFA, or have some extra time playing football in the park. That was his. And that kind of it was a kind of good incentive. And then he was working out himself. It actually helped with the maths as well, because he was working out himself. He said, there's 300 lines, I'm going to read 12 lines, I'm going to read 10 lines. So if it's this many days, then it'll be this many days, and it'll take this long. So that means, so it was basically like getting him proper interested, and he was really into it, really into it. So it wasn't just like I was saying, right, you're going to this many lines, I'm not going to explain to you. It was, he knew exactly what he's doing, that, so I'm learning this, then I'm going to do this. If I learn this many lines, then tomorrow I'm going to read this. So like today now, he's read Door and he's read Sabak Bara. So even now he's finished, he's still got 30th, 29th, and 28th. The last 3 paras are still a Sabak Bara. Even 27th to an extent is still a Sabak Bara, because the last couple you want to make sure that they're extremely, they're strong, because he was so excited to finish. That his brain might not have fully kind of grasped that. So Alhamdulillah. So for example, this morning he read for Sabak Bara, he read half of 30 and half of 29th, and since he's finished, he's already done the last 5-6 paras with me, and then we start them last 6 paras again. At the same time though, he's doing Door going forward. So yesterday he read 10th. So we've split the Quran into 10 parts: first 10, second 10, last 10. So the last 10, he needs to read a para from the last 10 every day, a para. Then from the middle 10, he has to read a quarter every single day, and from the first 10, he reads a quarter every single day. So in a day now, he's reading about 2.5 to 2-3, or sometimes 3 paras is still reading a day of revision.
Why quarter?
Because obviously each para or each juz is split into four equal parts. If you do more than a quarter, there's not going to be any time. So for example, let's just say I said to him, all right, Talha, from the middle 10, I want you to read half today. Let's see, you can read first half of 15th. He can do that, but literally because of the time, because he's at school as well, 6.5 hours or so, the timing means then he won't have any time to go over the first 10. And like I said previously, you need to make sure you're hitting all 10, because if you might make the middle 10 stronger, and then the first 10 will get weak, and then you focus on the first 10 and the last 10 get weak. So it's just splitting and taking a bit from every single, I've got in my notes, I wrote, and this is what he's reading, color code, he's read this one, this is what he's struggling with, and just working our way through that. So we've got a plan for his door and his sabak para as well. This is what he reads on this day, this is what he reads on this day. He's read extra this day, so he can make up some over there. And that, so they basically just having a plan in place. A diary would really help. Obviously now they've got, you can have a notepad on your phone, but we saw just writing it down was a lot easier, because then even he could see. So he'd write it down himself, so he's read it, say Tala, look what you can read tomorrow. And then another thing that really helped is, because he's an auditory learner, every night what we would do is, so they've got a little MP3 player. Remember MP3 players? Yeah, we've got an MP3 player. It's got the entire Quran inside it. And then when he'd go to sleep at night, we'd put that quarter, so the next day that what he was going to read from the first 10, because obviously the more recent the para is, the stronger it's going to be. So for example, when he was on 29th, 26th was stronger than 15th, for example, and 15th was stronger than 4th, for example. So the next day, whatever quarter he's going to be reading from the first 10, we'd play that on the MP3 player, be on repeat. So he's asleep, he's gone to sleep. So before he's going to, he's probably heard the first 1-2 rukus and then he's knocked off. But he's playing all night for him on repeat that quarter, and that really helped. It made a massive difference, doing that, playing that on repeat, that quarter that he was going to read. Some parents might want to do that with the new sabak. You can probably do that for the first maybe like couple of months, but once he's memorized a set amount, it'd be really helpful to have that MP3 player, or even on the phone, wherever it is, having that on repeat when he's asleep, or even during the day. Just having it playing, in the background as he's reading a book or as he's eating or doing his homework, just having that playing. So in different settings, he's heard it, and it's just it's going into his ear, it's registering in his brain. So that really helped as well. So I just thought, so these were a lot of the questions are about the actual method, how it was done. So hopefully that kind of breaks it down and explains it as much as I think is needed.
Can you give me a specific example where you saw him struggle?
To be honest, not even after 10. So 7th para, again, my own experience teaching it, I don't know why, but a lot of students, when they memorize, they find 7th really difficult. It's one of those paras that I don't know why. Maybe it's slightly confusing, or maybe because 6th is so easy, 7th comes across as more difficult. I don't know what it is, but even with Talha and even with the in the masjid as well. So what happened with 7th? So before you got into 7th, so again, if you can see here, so he's reading like 9 lines. Yeah, so you've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines. Okay, just 9 lines over there, and again reducing lines there. So he's got there reduce them out. So what happened was he was learning 10 lines, 11 lines, but then we got to 7th, he was really struggling. He couldn't learn 10 lines, 11 lines. So I reduced it to 9 lines. He was still struggling. When I say struggling, for me, struggling means the amount of time. So just set amount of time, he needs to take that long to learn new sabak. If it's taking longer than that, then it's eating into sabak para time. It's eating into door time. About 35 minutes, 40 minutes. 40 minutes to learn. So 40 minutes to learn about 10 lines. That should be, that was the average that I had down for him.
Average with Talha?
With Talha, yeah, that 40 minutes to learn 10 lines doing sabak. I think older students can probably learn a bit faster. Going off my own students in the maktab, they could probably learn faster. Some take longer, some learn faster. I had a student who was memorizing like 10, 15 lines in 5-10 minutes, mashallah, tabarakallah. So for Talha, that's what we had down, that if it takes this long, that's good enough. If it's taking longer than that, then that's no good, because it's eating into sabak para time, it's eating into door time. You've got school, you've got obviously your own, reading your books and play time and stuff. And I didn't want to do that from the beginning. I said I don't want it to impact his childhood, in that sense, that he needs to still have his time to play. If that means reduce the sabak and it takes him a bit longer to finish, that's fine. I don't care about that. I'd rather he still had a well-rounded childhood, and he's playing and all the rest of it. So that's what we did with 7th. So when I realized that it was taking 45 minutes to learn them 10 lines, I thought, okay then, or 11 lines, let me reduce it. And it was still taking that time after 1 or 2 days. So I thought, let me reduce it again. So we got to the point where 9 lines was the equilibrium, was basically the right amount for him in that time. So that was, and I think it's very important to be able to adapt, to see that, okay, yeah, fair enough, he was doing 10, 11 there, but he can't do 10, 11 now, it's fine. Just he can do 9 for now, and then he can go back to, and then I think with so again, you could just see from 8th he's going straight back to so is actually not 10th, not 8th. So even from moving forward. So here on 9th he's already on like 10 lines, or moving on to like 11th, or 10th over here, increasing his lines. He's gone to, so here he's gone to 5, 6, 7. He's gone to 10 lines here. Do you get it? So it doesn't matter if in the middle you go back, you reduce it. It's fine. It's fine. Or sometimes stopping new sabak as well. So when it got really difficult, so his sabak para was good, and then it was 7th. 7th was this. He found that difficult. At one point, just stop the sabak a bit for a couple of days and say, listen, Tala, it's fine. Don't worry about new sabak. Let's just focus on this. You're struggling to remember it. Let's just read. 23rd, it was the same thing. Somehow, for some reason, Surah Yasin, he got to the point where he was he learnt it was okay, and as soon as he started Surah Safat, Surah Yasin started getting weaker. So he said, that's fine. Let's pause, new sabak. Let's just focus on Surah Yasin for a bit. It doesn't matter losing a couple of days here and there. It's fine, because the last thing you want is for the revision to get weak, because then it's so demoralizing for yourself and for the child. Just stop it. You, like, literally stopping the rot. You stop. Okay, no more. let's practice that, let's get that sorted, and then we move forward. So that the adaptability is very important. Not be rigid in the mindset and thinking, right, that's one way we're going to do that. No matter what happens, we're just going to plow through. No, it's fine. You can change it. It's not the end of the world.
Did he ever sort of feel like, you know what, today it's not in me today, I can't bother today?
Yeah. So obviously, he'd never say that. He never say that. But as parents, that's just so important to be, in tune with your kids. You could tell. He'd wake up in the morning and he'd be reading, and he'd just be like, no, it's not. He'd be learning it, but he's not really learning it. So again, it's all about, it's about cutting your losses. You think, he's not in the mood today. It's fine. So you tell her, it's all right. Leave you sabak. Let's learn sabak bara. Let's learn sabak bara. Let's do door instead. We'll come back to new sabak later. That's normal. We're human. All of us, we go to work sometimes, and some days we're not really feeling it. And obviously, kids are no different. Your kids are even more kind of vulnerable to their mood swings. It's fine. You just literally, the worst thing to do is when they're in that mood and to just carry on banging against the wall and say, no, you're going to do it. You're going to do. You don't do that. You think, okay, let's just change it. Let's do something different. It's not the end of the world if you miss one day of sabak, or if you change it around. That's my experience, and I found that. Gee. So a closing statement is, I hope that's kind of like explained the method of doing it. But again, there are loads of, and your child might do different. You might have a child who's, mashallah, tabarakallah, got a really good memory, and instead of reading 5 times, about 3 times might be enough. So you do go with that. On some, you might think, no, actually 5 times not enough, 6 times. That's fine as well. You might have a child who's being homeschooled, so he's not got them 6 hours in school, and he's got more time to learn at home. So you think, okay, I want to read more sabak. It's all different. The main thing is to adapt, and remember, it's not one size fits all. It's not this method works for everyone. You can use the method as a blueprint, and you tweak it slightly, inshallah, and I think it'll work. And obviously, putting all your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, making plenty of dua for your child, that's so important. I know myself and obviously others, every single day just making dua for him, and even something simple every time I'm going to, Ya Allah, make it easy for him to learn the next surah, because I'm thinking in my head, this is a difficult surah. Surah Sad is coming up, Surah Jinn is coming up. Ya Allah, please make it easy for him. And these kind of things like dua, never underestimate dua, man. It's literally a super weapon. Yeah, so that's kind of hopefully, inshallah, that covers all of the questions that we got. I'm hoping I covered everything. If not, I apologize.